General Hospital spoilers tease that one of the newest obsessions sweeping across every emotional layer of Port Charles is the possibility of Molly and Cody becoming a power couple, not just in romance, but in the chaotic worlds of law, media, and the dark network of secrets they're gradually uncovering. What started as a casual relationship, a pretend romance for the nurse's ball, has now transformed into a powerful force. An unstoppable momentum reshaping familiar bonds and shattering the fragile emotional structure between three people, Molly, Cody, and Christina. Molly, a smart, ambitious, and principled woman, begins to trust Cody, a man with a complicated past and a wandering history, but a heart full of sincerity and loyalty. Something ignites between them. It's not just physical attraction or comfort in each other's presence, it's the sense that together, they can solve the problems others have long ignored. That they instinctively understand each other's hidden depths. They become mirrors for one another, each one completing the other. In this fusion, they start finding answers to the questions that once kept them trapped in their own darkness. But things get more complicated as Christina, who's always considered herself closest to both Molly and Cody, suddenly finds herself on the outside of that connection. She was once Cody's confidant, and the one who shared life's puzzle pieces with Molly. But now everything is shifting. A growing sense of betrayal gnaws at her as she witnesses the transformation of Molly and Cody into a unified front, from lingering glances to subtle touches and long nights working side by side. Christina is no longer part of that relationship, and it sends her spiraling. For Christina, losing control over her closest relationships is one of her deepest fears. And now, it's no longer a fear, but a painful reality she must face. The cracks in her psyche widen, confusion turning to anger, jealousy becoming resentment, creating an emotional storm no one saw coming. Meanwhile, Molly and Cody, whether intentionally or not, are forging a new emotional order no one can control. They're sharing their deepest truths, facing long-standing issues like the threat of Rick Lansing, Molly's father, the man Christina once tried to kill by sabotaging his car. Cody, aware of Christina's darkest secrets, is now becoming Molly's protector, as she steps into a world she never imagined entering. Their every step shatters old rules and builds a new reality, where Cody is the man Molly needs, and Molly is the only woman who understands Cody's inner battles. But as unresolved secrets from the past begin to surface, and Christina feels increasingly pushed aside, replaced by her own sister, everything begins to crack in brutal ways. Christina's psychological unraveling grows worse. Rather than seeking understanding, she starts plotting to restore the old dynamics, by any means necessary. She might expose her own secrets, blame Cody, or hurt Molly using personal knowledge only she possesses. And when all those pent-up emotions erupt, Port Charles will witness a true psychological earthquake, a battle not just of love, but of envy, fear of being replaced, and the desperate need for control. In the midst of the chaos, one thing is clear. If Cody and Molly truly become a power couple, their rise won't just be a love story, it will be a wave of change that threatens to drown the world Christina once tried so hard to preserve. And in the shadows, Christina is preparing to act, not to protect anyone, but to reclaim everything she believes she deserves. Because to her, if she can't have Cody or Molly, then no one deserves happiness. When Cody starts working closely with Christina at Charlie's, what seemed like a simple partnership quickly spins out of orbit. Their proximity opens a gateway to horrifying secrets Christina has tried to keep buried, and when Cody uncovers the truth that Christina was behind Rick's car accident, the illusion collapses. There's no more doubt, Christina's crime is confirmed. And with that truth comes the exposure not only of a dangerous act, but of the turbulent psychological layers beneath it. A mix of pain, jealousy, and the desire to control that has transformed her into someone capable of anything to keep her place in the lives of those she loves. But what Christina didn't expect is that Cody is no longer alone. He's now aligned with Molly, the sister, the woman he's falling for, and the person with the deepest reason to stand up to Christina. Their bond has moved beyond fleeting romance or dreamy future plans. They're becoming a force. A duo combining sharp insight, courage, and legal knowledge, united under one goal, to protect what's right and expose the threat Christina poses to both their family and the broader Port Charles community. The story has evolved into a silent war. Cody and Molly begin collecting evidence, analyzing behaviors, quietly building a case to hold Christina accountable. This is no longer a love triangle, it's a battle between reason and madness, between clarity and a mind unraveling. Together, Cody and Molly form a united front, and Christina feels it, like a vice tightening around her mental space. Every glance between Cody and Molly reminds her that she's losing control. And to her unstable mind, that's unacceptable. Erratic behavior starts to emerge. Christina shifts her tactics, manipulates those around her, even tries to sabotage Cody and Molly's standing. But what she doesn't realize is that these actions only harden their resolve. They no longer just want to protect themselves, they want to save Christina from the version of herself she's becoming. The psychological and strategic assault Cody and Molly wage is quiet, deliberate, and ruthlessly effective. They don't make big moves, but each action is calculated, every reaction from Christina documented. They track her emotional triggers, her slip-ups, every memory she accidentally reveals under stress. Cody, who once understood Christina in a unique way, now uses that knowledge to target her weaknesses, while Molly applies her sharp intellect and planning to shape their course of action. They've become a dual weapon, one striking with emotion, the other defending with strategy. And in the process, Port Charles turns into an unspoken battlefield, where hugs and smiles mask hidden resistance, where every gesture carries secret meaning. This attack isn't just on Christina as an individual. It's aimed at the entire network of relationships she's trying desperately to preserve. She feels surrounded, forced to react, and in that suffocating pressure, Christina may resort to more extreme measures, transforming her inner turmoil into a full-blown storm. And in the eye of that storm, Cody and Molly will have to decide, push Christina to her breaking point, or save someone who was once family, a friend, and someone Cody once vowed to protect. But no matter how it ends, one thing is certain. The old balance is gone. The war has begun. And no one, not even Christina, can stop the rise of a new power couple, Cody and Molly, carrying the fire of truth, the strength of logic, and the resilience to confront any darkness lurking in this city. As Cody began to grasp the full gravity of what Christina had done, a fundamental shift occurred in his demeanor. At first, Cody simply felt uncomfortable witnessing Christina's erratic behavior. Then came the suspicion. Vague, uneasy feelings about her evasive language, her avoidant gestures, and the strange silences woven into her stories about the car accident involving Rick and Elizabeth. But as the small clues gradually connected to form a complete picture, Cody was forced to accept an undeniable truth. Christina had deliberately tampered with Rick's brake system. And if not for a strange twist of fate that put Elizabeth in the car at the last moment, Rick might not be alive today to recount what happened. This was no longer speculation or intuition, Cody now had proof. Audio recordings he had captured by accident when Christina let her guard down, half-serious confessions during drunken conversations, surveillance footage from the parking garage, and her strange pattern of frequent visits to Rick after the accident, all of it began to form an unshakable indictment. But Cody knew that having evidence was one thing, bringing Christina to justice was something else entirely. Especially with the powerful forces at play, more tangled than he had imagined. It was at that moment Molly, who had grown increasingly close to Cody, decided to step in. Not only a sharp-minded woman with a clear legal intellect, Molly was also Christina's sister, someone who had loved and protected her deeply, but also someone who understood the danger of a person spiraling into paranoia while still holding access to too many secrets. Molly could no longer stand by while watching her sister sink further into darkness, especially when people like Rick and Ava were exploiting Christina's instability as a tool for blackmail and manipulation. Cody and Molly began working as a team, a newly formed power couple at the heart of Port Charles, where personal feelings gave way to justice, and family loyalty was tested by truths too stark to ignore. As they gathered evidence and crafted their legal strategy, they uncovered ties far more dangerous than they had expected. Ava, with her survivor's instincts honed in the criminal underworld, had recognized Christina's vulnerability early on. She was the one who pushed Christina into action, feeding her the narrative that she was avenging the women harmed by Rick, when in reality, Ava was using Christina as a pawn to blackmail Rick and gain leverage in other underground dealings. Rick, who should have been the victim, turned the tables, remaining silent and using the accident as a weapon to keep Christina under his thumb, drawing her into an even more perilous spiral. He and Ava had formed a toxic alliance, exploiting Christina's mental breakdown to conceal their crimes while expanding their reach through a web of extortion targeting other wealthy figures in town. What horrified Cody and Molly wasn't just the conspiracy among these three individuals, but the fact that their actions were shielded by reputation, influence, and the deafening silence of people in power. But time was no longer on Christina, Rick, or Ava's side. Cody and Molly advanced steadily, submitting evidence to the district attorney's office, persuading reluctant witnesses, and preparing a public media campaign in case the justice system was compromised. Every move was calculated. No loose ends. They were no longer just peripheral players in a larger plot, they had become the center, the ones rewriting the rules. When the indictment was filed in court, the entire town of Port Charles was shaken. No one expected that three names, long entangled in messy family and romantic dramas, would sit at the core of a criminal web spun from lies, ambition, and destruction. Christina, once beloved for her sincerity and devotion, now stood as a symbol of how manipulation can consume a soul. Rick, a seasoned lawyer, now faced serious allegations that could end his career. Ava, a survivor of countless scandals, now stood before truths she could no longer escape. But the most heartbreaking figure was Christina, dragged into the depths of guilt yet still believing she had acted in the name of justice. As the trial began, those who had once loved her were forced to watch a version of Christina they no longer recognized, lost, bitter, and feeling betrayed by the two people she had once cherished most, Cody and Molly. Yet that betrayal, as painful as it was, may be the only thing that could save Christina, or at least, save others from the path she was pulling them down. And as the gavel struck in the courtroom, a new catastrophe officially began. Not just for the three defendants, but for the entire town, as the truth set off a cascade of unpredictable consequences. Still, one thing was undeniable: Cody and Molly, with courage and a hunger for justice, had dared to stand up, even against family and dark forces, to protect what was right in a world spiraling into chaos. And that was the beginning of a new chapter, where darkness would no longer rule in silence. But Cody was pushing things too far. What began as a mission to uncover the truth had turned into manipulation. He was now orchestrating a relentless confrontation, dragging everyone into a brutal showdown. The story, already complex, became more entangled than ever as Cody launched a new wave of calculated moves, not just to expose Christina, but to control the entire narrative, reshaping the power dynamics of Port Charles. And these very calculations were leading to an unspeakable disaster. A new catastrophe was forming, as consequences spiraled beyond his control, and no one, not even Cody himself, could contain the chaos he'd unleashed. Every move he made, from collaborating with the DA's office to pressuring the media, was precisely engineered. But what he hadn't foreseen was the chain reaction. Christina's secrets weren't just about personal mistakes. They were the linchpin in Rick's long-standing manipulation of the justice system, and in Ava's ruthless exploitation of others to protect her power. By choosing to expose it all, Cody wasn't just taking down Christina, he was pulling Molly into the heart of the storm. Torn between love and blood, Molly now found herself at ground zero, facing consequences no one could have imagined. Under pressure, Rick began to fight back. All the years of accumulated power, of covering scandals and protecting his image, were now activated in one final, desperate play. He flipped the script, accusing Molly of being complicit, of knowing everything and keeping silent for her own benefit. This dangerous lie put Molly in an impossible position, from champion of justice to potential accomplice. The town erupted. Leaks twisted the facts, the media distorted the case, and Molly became a target. Every word she spoke potentially weaponized against her. Meanwhile, Cody, who had started it all, began to lose control of the storm he had summoned. The shockwave spread. Elizabeth, once a victim of the car accident, was pulled back as a witness. Alexis, the mother trying to keep her family together, now found herself torn between daughters on opposing sides. And Christina, cornered by accusations, began revealing truths that could unravel everything. Evidence that Cody had withheld information, that recordings had been edited, that some of his actions were fueled not by justice but by personal vendettas. Each decision Cody had made in the belief he was doing the right thing now unlocked doors to absolute chaos. He hadn't just exposed a scandal, he had triggered a moral, legal, and emotional crisis that swept through Port Charles like wildfire. No one knew who was guilty, who was innocent, who was in control, and who was being played. And amid the escalating nightmare, one question haunted everyone involved: had Cody, in his pursuit of justice, become the very source of the devastation no one could undo? Christina and Ava, two women seemingly opposite in every way, from background to lifestyle to moral code, are now confined under the same roof, a cold and silent prison where every mask must fall, and where the naked truth has nowhere left to hide. What seemed like the end of the story, with accusations, trials, and sentencing, has now opened a completely new chapter, one where the balances of psychology, power, and reputation are violently disrupted. Their shared presence in the same correctional facility is not just a symbol of justice served, but a harbinger of the psychological explosions quietly building in the dark. Two women, each carrying a past full of scars and untold truths, are now forced to face themselves, and each other. Christina, once the gentle, devoted, and emotionally fragile sister, now bears the stain of being labeled the mastermind in an attempted murder plot. She is isolated from her family, stripped of trust and compassion from those who once loved her. Ava, with her calculated moves, lies, and backdoor dealings, is no longer the powerful queen she once was. Now, she's just another inmate, but with a sharp, cold stare, she knows she hasn't truly lost. Not when she shares a cell block with the very woman she once manipulated like a puppet. The spark lies in their proximity, a new rebalancing of power between former manipulator and manipulated. While the town of Port Charles remains stunned by the outcome of the trial, within the prison walls, a new psychological game begins. Christina, torn between guilt and the pain of abandonment, starts to question her own memories. Did she act of her own free will, or had she been Ava's pawn all along? Ava, in contrast, remains terrifyingly composed. She doesn't apologize, doesn't explain, only watches and smiles, as if being here is just another step in a larger plan, as if prison is nothing more than a temporary detour. And while people still talk about the trial, the fall of the Corinthos family, and the ripple effects throughout the criminal underworld, a new obsession quietly grows, the budding romance between Cody and Molly. What once seemed like a hopeful relationship born from shared trauma and healing now becomes the center of suspicion and unraveling. The glances, the whispers, the judgment, from family, from society, and from their own consciences, are driving the relationship into darkness. Because no one can understand how two people who led the charge to put Christina behind bars could fall in love, or whether it's precisely because they buried her in darkness that they found each other in shared guilt. This twisted rebalancing is happening not only within Cody and Molly but across the web of relationships surrounding them. Alexis now avoids Molly, no longer trusting her daughter's sense of justice. Sam remains silent, neither defending Christina nor supporting Cody. And Sunny, who once protected Christina at all costs, has now severed ties with both of them. Cody can feel the invisible distance widening, while Molly starts to question her own fairness. Did she prosecute Christina for justice? Or out of long-suppressed anger, jealousy, and the weight of always having lived in her sister's shadow? Cody, once a symbol of truth in action, is now caught in a vortex of conflicted emotion. He loves Molly, but deep down, he feels like a traitor, not just to Christina, but to himself. He was the one who understood Christina best, who promised never to hurt her, who stood by her when no one else did, and now, he's the one who helped put her in a cell. Even his love for Molly, sweet as it may be, now feels suffocating, because it's built on the ruins of a psychological disaster that can't be washed away. Meanwhile, Christina and Ava, in a cold cell where no light reaches, begin a new kind of connection. No longer victim and manipulator, but two imprisoned souls confronting the cost of their actions. But if anyone thinks prison will break Christina, they're mistaken. In the dark, Christina is slowly regaining the clarity she lost. She begins to re-examine everything, to understand her old wounds, and to learn how to distinguish truth from deception. And if Christina fully awakens within these four walls, the question is no longer whether she regrets what she's done, but whether she will seek revenge. Will Ava become her target? Or will it be Cody and Molly, the couple who tore her life apart, who face her wrath in the next chapter? Whatever the answer, one thing is certain: every adjustment has gone far beyond expectation. A new disaster is quietly emerging, not from the outside, but from within fractured hearts, from choices once thought righteous but now revealed as the sparks of tragedy.